When a country needs to import soldiers from 128 different countries to keep a war going, that's a sign. When the government itself cuts off its army's only means of communication, that's a sign. When a longtime ally of the president is committed to an asylum 48 hours after criticizing him, that's a sign. When its own air defenses start shooting down civilian planes from the same country, that's a sign. And what about when that happens at the same time? Well, they're not just signs anymore. It's desperation. And that's exactly what's happening in Russia right now, while Ukraine is experiencing its best moment in 10 months of war. To understand what changed, we need to go back a bit, because most people still think that Russia is winning. But the signs say otherwise. Until 2025, Russia was advancing slowly, conquering territory at a huge cost. Putin seemed confident. But then came 2026. In February, everything was turned upside down. And in April, for the first time since mid-2025, it's Russia that's on the defensive. Let's look at the signs. The first one is on the battlefield. Look, Ukraine has regained about 480 square kilometers in Zaporizhia since January. The biggest territorial advance since the major attempt at retaking in 2023. February was the first month since 2023 in which Kyiv regained more territory than it lost. In March, Russia made virtually no advances. This hadn't happened in 2.5 years. But the numbers of Russian casualties are even more impressive. And it's no accident. In March 2026 alone, Ukraine eliminated or seriously wounded more than 35,000 Russian soldiers, most of them with drones, an absolute record for the war. The average went over 1,100 per day. To give you an idea of what that means, compare it to what the Soviet Union lost during the war in Afghanistan. It was about 15,000 soldiers in 10 years. Putin's Russia loses that in 2 weeks. Think about how big that is. These numbers didn't come out of nowhere. Something happened in February that triggered everything. And the answer involves two names that no one expected to see together in a war. Elon Musk, the owner of SpaceX and Starlink, and Pavel Durov, the creator of Telegram. Russia had been using thousands of illegal Starlink terminals on the battlefield to coordinate troops and pilot attack drones. These drones with Starlink became immune to electronic warfare. The systems that Ukraine uses to bring down drones didn't work against them. Until one hit a passenger train in January and killed 5 people. Ukraine gathered the evidence and publicly pressured SpaceX. And it worked. On February 1st, SpaceX deactivated all unregistered terminals. Any terminal attached to a drone moving over 90 kilometers per hour was automatically cut off. Starlink traffic plummeted within days. The effect was immediate. The Ukrainian defense advisor described it as a catastrophe. The Russian command system collapsed. Soldiers started climbing onto church roofs and cell towers to improvise antennas. The problem is that Ukrainian operators detected these soldiers by their body heat, using first-person view drones. Many never came down.
In a single night, we completely fell apart, back to the caveman days. This video will only be posted when if I manage to. Elon Musk turned off all of our internet completely. Now we can't use Starlink, not anymore. I'm already going crazy here.
Russia then tried to create an alternative with its own satellites. They launched 16 compared to Starlink's more than 10,000. The difference is so absurd that an analyst even made fun of it, saying, "This is not a typo." And it was at that exact moment, with the army already blind, that Russia itself decided to blind itself even further. Days later, the Kremlin began to restrict Telegram. Almost 100 million Russians used the app. But for the army, it was the main communication channel on the battlefield. Coordinates, drone videos, defense, fundraising, everything went through Telegram. The FSB, the Russian Secret Service, claimed that foreign spies had access to the soldiers' messages. The reaction of Russian military bloggers, the same ones who support the war, was explosive. Fighter Bomber, one of the largest war channels in Russia, wrote, "We can't cut the Ukrainians off from Starlink, but we can cut our own soldiers off from Telegram." Another channel summed up the despair in one sentence, saying, "Telegram is the only communication channel, only in all caps, but things got worse." On April 3rd, the blocking of VPNs, tools that Russians use to bypass censorship, ended up bringing down the entire country's banking system. Only cash worked. The Moscow subway allowed free entry. Stores, restaurants, gas stations, everything stopped. Pavel Durov, the creator of Telegram, summed up what happened by saying, "Their attempts at blocking triggered a massive banking failure." The Kremlin, in an attempt to control information, had just brought down its own economy. And do you know what alternative the Kremlin offered? A government app called Max, with no privacy protection at all. All messages are stored on government servers. Russian special forces refused to use the app, and soldiers who refused to delete Telegram were transferred to Stormzy penal units, which, in practice, is like a death sentence. Ukraine didn't wait. It launched coordinated counterattacks and regained 480 square kilometers during this period of Russian blindness and deafness. But do you know what's even more impressive? Everything I've shown so far is just part of the story. Starlink and Telegram wouldn't have caused so much damage if Russia had enough soldiers. And that's where the most disturbing sign of all appears. In the first 3 months of 2026, Russia lost 90,000 soldiers. It recruited 80,000. The math is simple. They're losing more than they can replace. And most of them were taken out of combat by Ukrainian drones. In Moscow alone, recruitment has dropped by 25%. The profile has also changed. Now they are mostly men between 45 and 55 years old. Russian citizens with no alternatives. The Ministry of Defense's ads try to attract these men with the message, "Take your millions before peace arrives." The British Minister for the Armed Forces made a very accurate comment about this, saying, "People are realizing that it's a one-way ticket." But after all, how is Russia trying to solve all this? And the answer? Well, it sounds like fiction. They are recruiting people all over the world. I'm talking about more than 18,000 foreigners from 128 different countries. Besides the North Koreans, you already know, the stories are disturbing. Cuba, for example, is the largest source, with estimates ranging from 5 to 25,000 fighters. According to intelligence estimates, the life expectancy on the front line is between 140 and 150 days. They receive $2,000 a month, in a country with an average salary of $17. And there's a disturbing detail. Many of these young recruits are only 17 years old. The stories coming out of Africa are even worse. More than 1,000 Kenyans were recruited with promises of security jobs. A viral video shows a Kenyan with an anti-tank mine strapped to his chest being called a can opener by a Russian soldier.
What's your name?
Francis.
Today you're the can opener.
He's about to run, skipping through the forest.
Out of 14 Ghanaians lured with promises of jobs, only 3 were alive a month later.
Move!
No.
Go on.
From India, a YouTuber was advertising helper jobs in the army. The Indians received contracts in Russian and went straight to the front line. And what about the North Koreans? Of the first 12,000 sent, about 6,000 were killed or wounded. Almost half. They used infantry tactics from 4 decades ago. Some believed they were in a training exercise, not a real war. They were ordered to commit suicide instead of being captured. 2 who were captured by Ukraine asked to go to South Korea, not back to North Korea, and they wrote, "Let's consider the people of South Korea as our parents and siblings." That statement needs no comment. The truth is, when a country has to look for people like that to fight its wars, that's far from being a sign of strength. It's desperation. The question no one in Moscow wants to answer is, how much longer can Russia keep this up? Many believe that as long as there is money, Russia will be able to sustain this war. But the money is running out. And that's the most devastating sign of all. The numbers don't lie. Russia's growth plummeted from 4.3% in 2024 to 0.6% in 2025. Meanwhile, defense spending reached almost 40% of the federal budget. For the first time under Putin's leadership, military spending surpasses social spending. Yes, that's right. Russia is spending more on the war than on its own people. Meanwhile, oil revenue dropped by 24% in 2025. The Sovereign Wealth Fund, which is the country's emergency reserve, had $113 billion before the war. Today, it's less than half of that. Unemployment is at 2.1%. And for many, it seems like a normal number. But in fact, this rate hides a sign of crisis. More than 1 million workers have been pulled from the civilian economy into the war, and about 73% of Russian companies can't find workers. Even the fire department is suffering from the shortage of workers. They have 1/3 of their positions unfilled. When looking at this dramatic situation that Russia is experiencing, it's inevitable to draw a parallel with the Soviet Union in the 1980s. They had the same dependence on oil, the same militarization suffocating the economy. But there was one difference. The war in Afghanistan, which helped destroy the Soviet Union, cost 2.5% of the military budget. The war in Ukraine consumes many times more. And when a dictatorship loses the battlefield, loses its soldiers, loses its money, what's left? One word: control. And that's when the last sign appears. In March, a Russian lawyer named Ilya Remezlo published a piece that shocked the country. 5 reasons why I stopped supporting Putin. He called Putin a war criminal. This wouldn't be so surprising if Remezlo were an opponent, but he was exactly the opposite. He spent years attacking Navalny, Putin's main opponent. He served on a Kremlin advisory council, a loyal government supporter, and just one critical article was enough for him to be admitted to a psychiatric hospital in less than 48 hours, the same type of institution the Soviet Union used to silence those who disagreed with the government. When even your most loyal allies turn against you and the response is forced hospitalization, something is very wrong within the system. And it doesn't stop there. Russian air defenses are so paranoid about Ukrainian drones that they've started shooting at their own planes. In March, they shot down a civilian aircraft near Moscow, killing an aviation blogger who was on board. In another incident, an air defense system fired at a Boeing 737 from Aeroflot, Russia's main airline, because it mistook the passenger plane for a drone. The fear of Ukrainian drones is causing Russia to attack its own citizens. So far, I've shown everything that's going wrong for Russia, but what makes this moment different isn't just the Russian collapse. It's what Ukraine has built while Russia was destroying itself. Look, Ukraine is going through a silent military revolution today. It produces drones on a scale that no military power in the world can match. The goal for 2026 is to surpass 7 million units. For comparison, in 2022, the country had 10 drone manufacturers. Today, there are more than 500. A single manufacturer produces 20,000 fiber optic drones per month. And these drones are immune to electronic warfare because they use a physical cable instead of a radio signal. There's no way to block it. The numbers from March show the size of the impact. Ukrainian drones hit more than 151,000 targets in a single month. The so-called drone wall extends up to 40 kilometers from the front line, creating a zone where nothing moves without being detected and engaged. And the economics of this war are out of this world. A $500 FPV drone is capable of destroying a tank that costs millions. Among them, there's a defense drone that deserves attention, the Sting, which costs $1,300 and is capable of shooting down Iranian drones worth $50,000. In a NATO exercise, just 10 Ukrainian drone operators defeated an entire British armored brigade, destroying 17 vehicles in 12 hours. Analysts from the most important military academy in the United States compared what is happening now to the introduction of the tank in World War I. At that time, the evolution from the tank to Blitzkrieg, the lightning war that changed the world, took 23 years. With drones, however, analysts estimate that this revolution could happen in 1 or 2 years. Ukraine may be inventing the way to wage war in the 21st century. Meanwhile, Russia is still trying to fight with a war manual from the last century. Yes, Russia still controls about 20% of Ukrainian territory. The war isn't over, but all the signs point in the same direction. The army is bleeding faster than it can recover. Technology has collapsed, and the Kremlin itself helped destroy it. And there's an ironic detail in this story that few have noticed. Starlink is American, Telegram is from Dubai, the soldiers are Cuban, North Korean, Kenyan, the drone components come from China. The great power that presents itself as capable of challenging the world, well, needs the whole world in order to fight. The truth is that Russia is not losing to itself. It is, in fact, losing to a country that has learned to fight in a way it can't keep up with. Now, I want to hear from you. Of all these signs we've shown so far, which do you think is the most serious for Russia? Leave your opinion in the comments. If this video helped you understand what's happening, share it with someone who's following the conflict, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next ones. Take care! See you in the next video.